spoilerios about spoilerios. Let's roll.
Hello, I'm Sean Baker. Welcome to the final edition of Evolution of the Arm. It's Tuesday. 2 days ago, Twin Peaks: The Return 17 and 18 aired. I've seen both episodes twice since then. Needed some time to really process this. First off, I loved it. It didn't give me everything that I wanted, but I didn't really want or expect it to. Previously, on an episode of this show, I kind of declared or defined myself in my own head as a Lynch fan first and a Peaks fan second. I think people that are the other way and are Peaks fans first and Lynch fans second, I think there will be a higher percentage of them that will be frustrated or unhappy or angry, perhaps. I really liked it, and I'm okay if it stays where it is. I'm not gonna, if he were to do another season, or perhaps, as I think we might be more apt to get a Richard and or Linda movie that is a different context with those characters. Either way, whatever, I'm happy. So I want to go right into 17. There's so much stuff here. I want to get through this without making it an hour long. When we start with Gordon kind of delivering the last information about the Blue Rose cases to Albert and Tammy. He talks about, I'll try to pronounce this correctly, I believe it was Jidao, Judy, an extreme negative force Major Briggs encountered while he was working up on Blue Pine Mountain at his station, and approached Cooper and Gordon about enacting a plan to, they don't really say if it's to somehow try and capture or thwart or confine Judy. He never gets the chance. People start disappearing. Cooper tells Gordon, if I disappear, do everything in your power to find me. I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone. I'll get back to that later. That is obviously what the fireman or the giant told Cooper at the very beginning. Richard and Linda, two birds with one stone. I think that explains or ties up a lot of what's in episode 18. We get Bushnell, and he delivers Gordon's message. We had nice closure on Jerry Horn. So of Twin Peaks, we didn't get a lot of closure. There's a lot of stuff set up. Red, Shelley, Stephen and Becky, a lot of stuff we're not going to get closure on. I'm okay with it. The one thing that really bugs me is I really would have liked to have seen more of Audrey, but I mean, it's also amazing that that's what we're left with, right? And it kind of implies that there were other worlds, which is, we'll get into that. Bad Coop arrives at the coordinates by Jack Rabbit's palace. He goes into the fireman's domain, seems to have some kind of it almost looks like he and Major Briggs are being weighed in some kind of balance, and then he's sent through that melty saxophone thing down to the sheriff's station. My first question is, he was near the sheriff's station when he went to Jack Rabbit's palace and the coordinates, so why did he need to go into the fireman's domain to be put back in Twin Peaks? Now, it's either that because he didn't know when and where he had to be, and so the only way to get there was to go through the fireman, even though it was really only a short distance away from entering the fireman's domain, or that's a different world. So, but then so much crumbles, or it gets so slippery as we try to, parse this out. Okay, so if Bad Coops was in another universe from what we saw with Andy and Sheriff Truman, that doesn't make sense because Andy and Sheriff Truman are dealing with Richard, and Richard goes to where Bad Coop is, and we're never going to be able to figure it out. So it's just nice that it's a nice slippery snake for us to think about for the rest of our lives, or until we get more. As Bad Coop enters the sheriff's station, he sees Andy, he sees Lucy. There's a palpable fear in the parking lot that he's going to kill Andy, and especially after Andy's heroicism recently. He's kind of a dimwit. You kind of roll your eyes at him, but he's a great character, and I was really, really terrified for him for a moment. As Cooper comes into the sheriff's station, Nato in the prison in the basement starts to really freak out. Chet makes his move. Freddy knocks him out. They all get taken upstairs, and then we get this huge showdown, right? So there's, also this moment right before this happens where Bad Coop is sitting with Truman, and there's, Truman, he's sly old dog. He knows something's up. I mean, he's been talking to Hawk, and they know about the two Coops message from Major Briggs. And then Coop calls, and so there's this moment where you're looking at Bad Coop and you're looking at Truman, who's looking at Bad Coop, and you're thinking, shit, is Coop going to pull his gun and shoot him? Because he's got to know that it's Coop on the phone at this point. And then it all goes down, and Lucy is the one that, I mean, wow, awesome. So both Andy and Lucy have their moments as heroes, and it's so great. It was so unexpected. I mean, I wouldn't have seen that coming a mile away. If you had put that on a betting pool, I don't think I would have chose it. The Woodsmen show up as they did in 8 when Ray shot Bad Coop, and they, work their whatever their mojo is. So I don't know if they're bringing him back or they're trying to, take out the Bob seed to preserve it or something. And then this is where Freddy meets his destiny, right? So I've said before, I really like the way they've used the characters of the people who have passed away. So obviously Frank Silva died, in the 90s. So they've kept him alive in this in a lot of really cool ways. That facial melding with Bad Coop in the one episode, and flashback stuff, and then the seed. This was cool. It was a little cumbersome for me, but this and like with the NATO's head, it reminds me so much of the old David Lynch, the claymation where he was a painter trying to make the paintings move before he was a filmmaker. And so for that reason, I liked it. And I mean, how else are they going to use Frank Silva? So the Bob Egg's attacking Freddy, and it's tearing at him pretty good, and he ends up obviously conquering it. And now we have this scene where it's Gordon and Tammy and Albert and the Mitchum brothers and Truman and everybody's there. And this is the end of Twin Peaks. So NATO comes up and raises her hand, and Cooper, who has already previously looked at her, and there's like some inkling, right? They touch palms, and then she, I don't know what you would even call it, but her head kind of disappears in that black gaseous smoke that we see when we see Dougie and the Diane Tulpa disappear. But then her head goes to the red room and cracks open like an egg, and then there's Diane, and she's got the red hair like the curtains and the black and white alternating fingernails like the floor. I don't know what that means exactly. And then now Diane's back, and it's the real Diane. And at this point now, this is where I'm going to get in. There's two interpretations of the rest of this. I mean, this to me is the end of Twin Peaks, and it's a good end. Right as they touch palms, Cooper and NATO, Kyle MacLachlan, or Cooper's face, is superimposed over everything that happens for the remainder of this scene in the sheriff's station. And you hear him say in a slowed down voice, "We live inside a dream." Now this is an idea that's repeated by Philip Jeffries and Monica Bellucci in Gordon's Dream. And the question all along is, who is the dreamer? So I've got two interpretations here. So right here, I think we're seeing Richard. I think Richard is the dreamer. Now, I don't mean to imply that Cooper and all these wonderful people have been figments of a dream. This isn't Dallas. What I do think is happening is Lynch is comparing reality and realities to dreams. There's untold number of dreams, there's untold number of realities. So I think Richard is there, the dreamer, and he's starting to awake. And so then there's Coop. And the clock on the wall, it's stuck at 2:53, right? Because 2:53 is when this dream runs out. So Cooper has been stuck in this limbo for 25 years. So have we. 27, but we're going to ignore those two because we're just going to say 25 is where Lynch went back to it. So for 25 years, we've been in limbo. Cooper's been in limbo. The show has been in limbo. The dream has been in limbo. So now he's waking up at 2:53, which is, as my friend Allie's son, Kieran, pointed out, 2:53 is 25 years and 3 months. The show's been on 3 months. I don't think that's an accident. I really think that this is directly intentional. And I also think that in a larger sense, the dreamer isn't Richard. I think it's David Lynch. I think in these two episodes we see, meta got a little bit passé, but it's still effective. And I think this is it's not meta fiction so much, although it employs its understanding of itself. I don't know exactly what this is. It's Lynch. So I think that he's telling us this is over. This is when Twin Peaks ends. But the character of Cooper, so now they go to the Great Northern. Why is room 315 his old room now in the furnace? I don't know. He goes in, he tells Diane, I'll see you at the curtain call, don't try and come in after me. He goes in, Philip Gerard shows up and walks him through the same path which Bad Coop accessed in the convenience store, where you see the trees and the hallway. They go up the stairs that Gordon saw the woodsman on when he looked directly into the portal. And they go up the stairs, and they don't see the electrician woodsman who does the thing with the TV or the jukebox, whatever it is. But the jumping man is there. So the jumping man I've come to think of as a transportation device in some way. Reminds me a lot of old X-Men when they had Gateway and his bull roarer to kind of move them between different worlds and places. And they go to Philip Jeffries. The bosomy woman is not needed. She's not there. She's not needed to unlock the door. Jeffries talks to Cooper. He pulls the symbol for the Owl Cave ring out and then turns it into an 8, which isn't an 8, it's the infinity symbol. Cooper asks him for February 23rd, 1989, which is the night Laura Palmer died. Jeffrey says, let me locate that for you. You see this little dot, because he's looking for that date in the time stream. That's what the 8 or the infinity symbol represents. Finds it. Mike or Philip Gerard says electricity, and Cooper goes there. And then we get this black and white. He goes back into the past and he prevents Laura from dying. I didn't need to see all of this scene of Fire Walk With Me again, but it was fine. I like that we saw what Laura screamed when she was stepped off James' bike. She looks in the woods and screams. We see that she sees Cooper. We go through the whole scene. Now, in the movie, she leaves James, runs into the wood, and rendezvous with Jacques, Leo, and Renette. Cooper intervenes here, and he takes her. I don't know how they did this. I don't know if this is something obvious and I missed it. I was thinking it was a stand-in actress, but there's not one credited. But, I mean, that's Cheryl Lee or a daughter. I mean, I don't know, but it is, wow. Whatever they did. Because at first it's black and white and she's a little distant, but then it's closer up and it's in color. Whatever it was, he leads her. Then we see the Palmer house and we hear this screaming, and then Sarah Palmer comes out, knocks Laura's picture over and starts stabbing it with this broken glass. He's never going to say that I'm right, but she's clearly Judy. She's in some way. I don't know if she always was or if that's a development or whatever. I didn't think of this at first, but is what she's doing to the picture what makes her disappear from Cooper's grasp? Maybe. And then he's kind of left pondering what happened. We fade to this wonderful, the final Roadhouse scene with Julie Cruz singing The World Spins. The song gives me chills every time, especially here. It was great. We go right into 18. Bad Coop burning. Mike grows a new Dougie, gives it to Janie and Sonny Jim. Happy ending. So another instance of closure. Now we go back to the Cooper and Mike scene we saw in the earliest episodes, and it's is this the future, is this the past? Mike brings him to talk to the arm, and this time the arm doesn't say you can't leave because your doppelganger never came back. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He says the little girl that lives down the lane. I know this was in there previously. I haven't had time to go back and root out exactly where, so anything in the comments would help. I'm not sure how to kind of parse this in yet. But it does imply that all time is happening at once because Bad Coop has now been removed from the scenario. Even though we're seeing the scene again, I think it's still the original time we saw it. It's just changed. So by changing the past, Cooper has changed the future. The past dictates the future. Laura whispers something to Coop. We saw this before as well at the beginning of the season. She screams and disappears. Is this because of what Sarah Palmer did while they were in the woods? It looks likely. This is all happening at the same time. So imagine all time and events compressed into a single point. We get this bleed through, these things that kind of change and crack and don't make sense. Leland telling Cooper, which we also saw before, find Laura, is because we now know Laura was missing. So that another instance of this, everything happening at once. Cooper emerges from the curtains at Glastonbury Grove and this is my closure. I think if I hadn't had this scene, I would have been a little bit less inclined to be so content. This I thought was great. It's a little weird that Diane was there, but whatever. This is apparently the curtain call. I'm assuming he referenced to her in the last episode. They go and they start driving. Now, we get these night driving shots. A lot of this episode is these night driving shots. It really reminded me of Lost Highway. We went back and watched Lost Highway right after the first viewing of these two episodes on Sunday. And these this nightscape, these dark roads, I'm taking this now as the character of Richard and Linda, whether they are at this point or not, I don't know, but it seems like Cooper and Diane have been brought out of the context of Twin Peaks, like which I talked about ending at 253, and they're now, these characters are brought into a larger context of David Lynch. Because from here on out, it feels like a David Lynch movie. It just doesn't feel like Twin Peaks, right? It's fine with me. I love these characters of Twin Peaks over to become something else and to do more with them. Or even if he doesn't, I love this episode as a small David Lynch movie that had almost nothing to do with Twin Peaks or transcended or changed it. They go to this motel. Now at this moment, so Cooper goes into the office, Diane sees another Diane. This plus when they go to the room and she says, "What do we do now?" He says, "You come to me." And then they have sex and she's covering his face. I've got two interpretations for this as well, because this seems to me like, I said to Kirsten, I'm like, oh wait, this is a flashback. This is when Diane thought that this was Cooper, but it was Bad Coop. It was early Bad Coop. I don't know if that's the case. It might be, or it might just be that Richard, as the dreamer, is both part good Coop and Bad Coop. So he would exhibit qualities of both, as we see he does as we go on and we get into the Eat at Judy's confrontation. But then it would also make sense if this is the past and it's just edited weird, right? So if you picture they have sex, go to sleep, and he wakes up and gets the note from Linda. When they have sex and that ends, that's a different thing than when he wakes up. One doesn't, the second part where he wakes up doesn't actually follow the first part. It's just edited together that way. We've seen plenty of instances of this throughout the series. He wakes up, finds this note. "You're not the same person. Don't call me anymore, Linda." Now, Cooper or Richard doesn't understand this new context, but I think that's because the character of Cooper is going to have some growing pains becoming something else, because he's been through the most of anybody in Twin Peaks, right? He's had these experiences. He was in the first episode, the fireman told him this stuff. So I think that's why he retains his Cooperness, even though maybe now he's Richard. He goes driving, he sees Eat at Judy's, obviously Judy's, right? Zhao Dai. He goes in, he's asking about another waitress. We don't know what he's operating on, some intuition, but Cooper always did that. Again, is this Richard and he's exhibiting Cooper traits because he's the prime mover compared to these two? Goes through this altercation with the Cowboys. Could be a tip of the hat to Mulholland Drive with the cowboy. Probably not, but it evoked it for me. He gets the waitress to write down the address of the other waitress. He goes and it's Laura Palmer grown up. But it's not, it's Carrie Page. She doesn't, is she playing? Is she lying? She doesn't know who he's talking about. He says Leland, he says your father was Leland. She doesn't recognize. He says your mother was Sarah. Something just triggered. The way in Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway and Twin Peaks, there are doubles of people, there are doppelgangers or these recurrences within these individual stories. I think we're seeing this in this context of David Lynch. So this is that meta-ness I was talking about, where it's like he's almost butting different movies and things up of his whole oeuvre up against one another, and they're bleeding through. Another thing, so Carrie Page says, normally when somebody like you comes around, I tell them to fuck off. So who else has come around asking about Laura Palmer? When they're in the car, she's kind of talking about keeping a clean house in Odessa, and it seems like she's kind of falling asleep or letting her guard down. She says something about, in those days I didn't know any better. Is that her referencing her past in Odessa, or is that her referencing Laura Palmer? So they get to the house. They go up, and we get this Chalfont Tremont thing before. We've seen this in the trailer park, Carl Chalfont. In fact, people before that, Chalfont too, two Chalfonts. We also got that with Donna in the Meals on Wheels program, where she goes, this is Tremont, and then it's not her and her grandson anymore, the old woman from the lodge or the convenience store. Great scene. I believe the woman is actually the woman that lives in the house now, so it was cool that they incorporated her, and she did a great job. So then, when Cooper or Richard is convinced that this isn't going anywhere, they leave, and then he says, "What year is it?" And that's where you're like, wait a minute, so who is this? And he's just loose in this time stream. We don't know what's going on. And then you hear faintly that Sarah Palmer calling her daughter to get up from the pilot. And it triggers something in Carrie Page. And then she screams, that Laura scream, the lights in the house go out, And then that's it, right? And then we get the final shot of her whispering something to Cooper. I love the fact that they basically have made the Palmer house an evil entity in and of itself. I love the fact that this could be seen as Carrie Page or Laura Palmer about to wake up from a dream, and she lived and she's alive on this morning when her mom's calling her. And that's it. I think that's all we're going to ever have. I loved it. I hope you did too. If you did, leave comments. I've so loved doing this show. I may do an episode after Mark Frost's book comes out and I read it. Depends on how fast I can read it and kind of crunch it into something that I can talk about. But I'm going to probably be doing a show coming up. I'm thinking of calling Gruesome Things. It's just going to be not once a week, but it'll be... I really love horror and especially weird horror, and wanted to do something kind of a serialized thing for that. So look for that. And man, we got what we waited 27 years for, and it feels really fucking good. So my friends, I'll see you in the trees.